Welcome to the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast. Whether you are a seasoned professional or a first-time fundraiser, we have the advice you need to take your next step toward major gift mastery. I'm your host, Tom Dauber, President of Abundant Vision Philanthropic Consulting. I'm very excited. We've got a fellow joining us that, thinking back to my earliest days as a major gift officer, was just somebody everybody revered and looked up to. I'm pleased to have Joe Bull with me on the show today. Joe is, if you want to know about planned giving, this is the guy that knows the answers. So respected in that field. And we're so glad to have you on the show today, Joe. Welcome.
Thank you, Tom. It's a pleasure to do it.
Well, goodness, Joe, tell us about yourself. You know, we're going to get to your fundraising career. Want to hear all about it, but before we get to that, you know, how do you like to spend your time when you're not raising money?
It's funny. I think those of us that have done fundraising for a long time, you end up like you have a hard time. This work-life balance becomes like work-life melding kind of thing, and so it seems like I'm always raising money, but. Seriously, I spend as much time on the golf course as I can. That doesn't mean I'm any good, but at least I'd like to try it. And spend time with my two daughters who are now emancipated and adults and lovely people. But I do have a 4-year-old granddaughter, and it's a lovely way to spend some time. And read, just cook on the barbecue. I'm not a woodworker. My father was quite the handyman, and that gene skipped a generation. And so I need to make enough money to have other people do those kind of things because I can't do them. But in any event, just kind of normal stuff.
That's awesome. Well, so you've had a long career in fundraising. Could you walk us through how you became a fundraiser initially and the path that your career took?
Sure. I know there are people that now are like, oh, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. But I'm going to belittle my age a little bit here. I've been doing this for 39 years now. And when I started, nobody went in through the front door, and I certainly didn't go in through the front door. I thought I was going to be an athletic director when I grew up. And I did a master's degree in sport management and a law degree at the same time at Ohio State with the idea that I was going to get into intercollegiate athletics administration. I didn't want to be Jerry Maguire. I didn't want to do the agent thing, but I really wanted to get into athletic administration. And as I started looking for work, that was a fairly tough fraternity to break into because I wasn't an intercollegiate athlete and I didn't have many ties. But I did start seeing in the Chronicle of Higher Education, I started seeing some fundraising jobs. And I thought, well, I could do that because my dad owned a life insurance agency in our hometown for 50 years. And I spent several summers doing that. And my dad, to his everlasting credit, said, I want you to understand what you're getting yourself into here. Because there was some thought about I might go back and take over the family business and that kind of thing. And I mean, it was just a thought. And he said, this is a eat what you kill kind of business. And so he gave me a stack of folder of orphan clients and a phone book and a telephone and said, get on the phone and get out the door and start selling. And I learned two things. I learned one, I liked really dealing with people and even dealing with people in their homes and in strange, and just kind of not even knowing people. But I also realized I didn't want to sell life insurance for life. But it was a great experience. And so I started seeing these fundraising jobs and I'm like, well, I could do that. And I thought, well, if I get in the door, it might be easier to move over to athletics from being inside the institution than being on the outside totally. So I still don't know how this happened. And I will probably go to my grave not knowing how this happened. But right out of law school, like my first job right out of law school, I was the assistant director of planned giving at Duke University. And yeah, seriously, right? And now that was 1985. And you fast forward 39 years, there's no way that I could get that same job today. If I was 25 years old and getting out of law school, there's no way today I could get that job in similar circumstances. That's just how much our profession has grown and matured and everything. I mean, when I was at Duke, there was the director, the assistant director, and we each had a secretary. So there were four of us in the office. Duke has a planning office now of about 15 people. And so, I mean, it's changed. The field has changed and I've seen it change. So I am eternally grateful for finding that just kind of through the back door, because I've done it for 39 years. Uh, but I also realized that I had some great fortune to be in the right place at the right time.
So you started there at Duke. Where did you go from there?
So this is I met my wife, and who was finishing up a master's degree at another institution in college student personnel. And those people, almost everybody that has that degree ends up running a residence hall as their first job. And so we got married and we started looking for jobs together. And she ended up running a residence hall at NC State. And then I went from Duke to NC State, and we stayed in the Research Triangle for 6 years. Loved it there.
Oh, yeah.
And my wife's from Northwest Ohio. I'm from Central Ohio. And she started an alumni club for Bowling Green in Raleigh, and I started an alumni club for Ohio State in Raleigh. And through that, I got to know the longtime alumni director at Ohio State, a fellow by the name of Dan Heinlein, who is kind of a legend in the alumni field.
Yeah, he is.
I think Dan was the alumni director at Ohio State for like 40 years or something like that. And I got to know Dan through Case. I saw him at Case conferences, that kind of stuff. And he called me one day out of the clear blue. I'm just sitting at my desk minding my own business. And he said, hey, we're looking for somebody to run a campaign. We're going to build a new alumni. We're going to put an addition onto the alumni building at Ohio State. And we need somebody to run that campaign. And your name just keeps coming up. Would you want to talk to us about that? And I said, sure, I think. It's funny. It's your alma mater, and you think, oh my gosh, it'd be great to go back. But we were so ensconced at NC State, both of us were. And we just loved the Triangle and Raleigh. We decided, at that point, we're getting ready to maybe, this might be time for us to have kids. And it's like, wouldn't it be great to be closer to home for grandparents and all that kind of stuff? And so, well, let's look at it. And, one thing led to another, and I got that job. So I moved to Ohio State out of Planned Giving and into the notion of, running a small campaign we were going to put, for those people that are familiar with Ohio State, there's a building called the Fawcett Center, and the alumni building used to be a wing on that facility. And we were going to put 10,000 square feet on the end of that, a 10,000 square foot addition on the end of that building. And, not to air too much internal dirty laundry, but the presidents changed at the institution, and it went from adding 10,000 square feet onto the end of an existing building to a freestanding facility, which is there today, the Longaberger Alumni House. Anyhow, so I did that, I think, for 3 years, maybe. I think that's right. Yeah, 3 years. And the Planned Giving director's job came open at Ohio State, and I thought, man, I'd really like to that's a job I could hold on to for an awfully long time and really want to do. And I was fortunate enough to get that. And so then I moved over to be the Planned Giving director at Ohio State, and was at Ohio State for 16 years. Yeah. And a long time.
What year did you become the Planned Giving director there?
So we started in 91, and I think 94, I think.
Okay.
That's my recollection. Actually, I know that's it, because our daughter was born in 94, and she was born, and I changed jobs just about the same time. So
okay, that makes sense. And how long did you serve as the Planned Giving?
13 years.
13 years.
Lucky
wow.
13.
Yeah, you're
Lucky
not kidding.
13.
Now, where did you go from Ohio State?
So in 2007, I think anybody that works in a big organization for a long period of time, particularly if you're in a leadership position, sometimes there comes a point in time when it's just time to move on.
Mm-hmm.
And it was for me, even though it was my alma mater. There had been a significant number of changes above me, and it was just time for me to move on. Uh, took a I took this really interesting job. This is another one of those ones where a longtime colleague of mine. I think one of the things I might want to say as we go through this is the power of networking kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
And so through my service on the what is now the National Association of Charitable Gift Planners, the Plan Giving professional group, I did a fair amount of work and service on them, and I got to know people in a lot of different places. And one of my dear friends from there called me and said, "Hey, I've just left the University of Washington, and I'm the associate VP at the Nature Conservancy, and my job is to put together a principal gift program, and I've got an opening in the Midwest, and you'd be perfect for it." And I said, "Wow, your timing is impeccable, because I think it's about time for me to leave Ohio State." And
Yeah.
so we talked, and I went to DC and interviewed, and so that was August of 2007. Now, if you do the math on that, so this job never existed. And so, you get things rolling, you get to learn kind of what's going on, and you're trying to pull together, there's not a prospect list. I mean, it's starting from nothing, and so this is in September, I believe I started. And so getting ready to kind of get really things cooking in November, knowing that it's not the best time to get things started because you're getting into the holidays and stuff, but it's time to get started. And, people are like, "Oh, we can talk later," or whatever. And I'm thinking, okay, it's the holidays. So then you get into the January of 2008, and nobody wants to meet with me. And I'm trying to think, what in the world is going on? Well, of course, we all know in retrospect what was going on. People were seeing what was about to happen. The Great Recession, and too big to fail, and Lehman Brothers going bust, and all these other things were happening in the first quarter of 2008. So it really wasn't the best time in the world to actually start a new job trying to create a principal gift program. Pretty bad timing, actually. Pretty horrific timing, actually. And the Nature Conservancy, as you know, is an amazing organization. I mean, it's a fabulous organization, and they have a spectacular fundraising program. And it's just, it was just hard. And so my boss that had hired me, the University of Washington made her an offer that she couldn't refuse to come back. She was actually Bill Gates Sr.'s prospect manager when she was at UW. And then she left and went to the Nature Conservancy, and they let her be gone for about 14 months. And they said, "You got to get back here." And so they made her an offer she couldn't refuse to go back to UW. And so I got promoted into her job at the Nature Conservancy. And one of the first things I had to do was start laying people off, because we were going through this. It's the spring of 2008,
Yeah. I
and
remember.
and we are people are hemorrhaging. Everybody was hemorrhaging, and we were cutting budgets, and it was not a good time. And so then this leads to the next step is I'm looking at everything, and at this point I'm just merely administrative overhead. At this point, I haven't raised a dollar. I mean, a little, but not enough to justify my existence. But I was doing all this administrative, management kind of work, and I thought to myself, my gosh, if we have another big round of budget cuts, I might not make the next set. Because I looked at the budget, and I looked at the org chart, and I was in a pretty precarious position if there was another round of job cuts. Right about that time, mutual friends introduced me to the brand new chief executive officer of the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium. And he really wanted to change the way that the zoo looked at fundraising. And he came to it from a really interesting perspective. He had been the person that Bernie Marcus, the co-founder of Home Depot, tapped to be the first employee to build the Georgia Aquarium. Which, if you've ever go to Atlanta, and if you're into zoos and aquariums and stuff, and you ever go to Atlanta, you have to go there. The place is spectacular.
Yeah, it is.
And Jeff was the first employee and built the thing from the ground up. And he came back to Columbus. He had started his career at Columbus, and he came back to Columbus as the CEO. And he had a significant fundraising background because they had to raise the money to build the Georgia Aquarium. And he really wanted to change things around, and he and I just clicked. And so I left the Nature Conservancy, and I was then the VP of, it was essentially in the higher ed world, in the hospital world, it was advancement. But, we decided we wanted to, advancement is such a nebulous term. We wanted something that seemed to be a little more like, okay, what do you really do kind of thing? And we came up with community engagement. And so we called ourselves community engagement. And the idea was our job is to engage the zoo in the life of the community, engage the community in the life of the zoo. That was our back of the business card, kind of why we existed. And it was essentially like what you would expect from a college advancement program, with the exception of we didn't have alumni, but we had members and that kind of thing. And so did that for 4 years. And I don't know how to say this so that it doesn't sound, I'm just going to say it. It was, again, so Jeff Swanigan, the fellow that hired me, very, very tragically took a nap on his couch one Sunday afternoon and never woke up. And he was 3 months shy of 54 at that point in time. So it was incredibly tragic. And he was just one of those leaders that was kind of a Pied Piper. I mean, people, you just want to follow this guy. And that was only 6 months after I started at the zoo. And then we had a second executive or CEO that left, and then the third guy came in. And again, this is another one of the situations where he and I were kind of like plus and minus poles of a magnet. And we kind of repelled each other to a certain extent. And it's one of those things that I think if you ever take a job, if you ever rise to the point where you get to be a VP, I think that's one of the things you have to recognize, is that you're only as good as whoever your CEO is. And if you don't see the world the way the CEO sees the world, you have two choices. Either you learn to see the world the same way the CEO does, or you leave and find another job, because, and those are your only two choices. And it was obvious that it was B for me. I don't say this with any glee, but anybody that's in and around Columbus that has watched the news and stuff, there has just been some criminal convictions and some people going to prison for some stuff. And the guy that I was leaving the zoo because I didn't get along with is going to end up in prison. And I don't say that with any glee, but I just say it was pretty obvious. We just did not have any. We were no way on the same wave. At that point, it was. I kind of wanted to. I'd done the leadership thing, and I've left Plain Giving twice, and I've gone back to Plain Giving every time I leave it. So it's so I ended up becoming the Plain Giving director at Carnegie Mellon, which is it's one of those absolutely spectacular institutions that not that many people know about, because A, it's not in the Ivy League, and B, they don't play big time sports, right? And so it's like, oh yeah, I think I kind of know Carnegie Mellon. And you don't know that artificial intelligence was literally developed at Carnegie Mellon. Literally, I mean, they have good claim to being maybe the place, or maybe one of the two places where it was actually done. It's an incredible institute. So I went back as the AVP for gift planning, and got to revitalize and reinvigorate their Plain Giving program. And was there 7 years, and then COVID came along, and I was one of the first people that I ever knew that had kind of a virtual work environment. our younger daughter was in high school when I took the job at Carnegie Mellon, and we really didn't want to jerk her out of high school. And so I was commuting back and forth to Pittsburgh. I mean, not every day, I mean, because it's a 3-hour drive one way, but um, um, but they allowed me to be in Pittsburgh Monday through Thursday and do my work from Columbus on Friday, so I could be home for a longer weekend with my daughter who was in high school, which was fabulous. And not that many people were doing that in 2013. And so I was really fortunate to be kind of on the front end of that. And so anyhow, so then COVID hit, and it I decided, it was probably I just needed to be at home. And so thought it was time to hang my shingle out, and which is something I always thought about doing, and so I did. And there you go.
Yeah, and that's where you are today, correct?
Correct. And the other thing I noticed is, given the fact that I had spent most of my career in Planned Giving, one of the things that, because of the, it started with the tech bubble popping in the early 2000s, and then it exacerbated with that Great Recession in 2008, 2009 that we were just talking about. Yeah. And then it got even exacerbated a little bit more by COVID. A lot of organizations just can't justify paying a full-time Planned Giving officer, but yet they have the need for Planned Giving expertise, but they just don't have the budget or this capacity to hire somebody full-time. And so I thought that was an opportunity, and so it's, there's this whole notion of fractional now in our gig economy, like fractional HR or fractional CFO or whatever it is. I'm fractional gift planning or fractional Planned Giving, and it seems to have hit a really pretty solid space, because even medium-sized organizations and even some larger organizations, they just don't. They need the assistance. They just don't have the ability to hire somebody. And so, again, right place, right time kind of thing for me. Is knock on wood, it's going great.
That's all the time we have today. But be sure to tune in next week to hear the next part of this exciting conversation. Now, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider. I'm your host, Tom Dauber. Thank you for joining me as we journey together towards major gift mastery on the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast.